Hey guys, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how you can create this really awesome looking text effect in Blender. And the great part is it's super easy. We've got our first object here, which is sort of the holographic, I guess, trail. And then here we've got the second part, which is the text repeated, but sort of capped to give things readability. And I think this works really nicely, a nice color combination, and the best part is it's super easy to make. So let's get started. So I'm going to jump into a new blend file here. Just wait for that to load up. Okay, and the first thing I'm going to do is delete the default cube. I'm also going to delete this point light because we don't need it. And I'm not going to delete the camera, so keep that. Next, I'm going to come down and add some more text. If I rotate this 90 degrees on the x-axis and bring it up like so, and we can kind of position it, sort of, let's get it in the center. That looks better. Now I'm going to capitalize mine, so TXT, and I am also going to change the font. If I go down to font and click on this little file icon, we can pick a font. I'm going to be using one called Gothic Century, or Century Gothic. Century Gothic bold, like so. And that's the font I'm using. I'll link down below to a website where you can get some cool free fonts to use. And the next thing I'm going to do is really quickly set up our camera so that we don't have to worry about going into, changing our view all the time. We can just hit 0 and it will put us into our camera view. I'm also going to change the focal length to something like 76. I'm sure that'll work. And center our text and just bring it up a little bit. And let's get started on the effect. The first thing we're going to do is duplicate this text here, and let's move it back a little bit on the y-axis. Now I'm going to come into the geometry settings and give it a extrusion. And this can be something like, I don't know, 0.3 maybe would be okay. Fine, actually I'm going to go a little bit more for this one. Let's try 0.5. Oh sorry, 0.35. Let's try 0.35. And I'll bring it back on the y-axis. Then we're going to do the same for this font and add an extrusion of like 0.5. That might be a little bit big, so I'm going to pull that back. That looks good. And now all I have to do is just move it and clip it into the second text. And this will make a lot more sense later. Finally, with this front capping text here, I'm going to give it a bevel. And let's change the bevel depth. It's like something like that. Looks kind of cool. Like we can even give this a profile bevel, which in my opinion would look even cooler. Because if we make this a glass texture, that'll really capture the light. Yeah. Or something like that, I think. Look a bit better. We might need to change bump the resolution up. Don't worry about shading issues. They will hopefully fade away once we get to rendering this. If it doesn't, we can always change this curve to something a little less dramatic. Okay, let's rotate this so I can see the trail behind the text. And now I'm going to create a new shader for it. So I'm going to go into the shading tab. I don't know why that's taking so much time. Okay, I'm going to go into shading tab, change the render engine to cycles, and select a GPU if you have one. Next, we're going to create a new texture for this back trail. And I'm going to go ahead and name this text effect. Very descriptive, not. And I'm going to delete the principal BSDF. We're going to add in a emission node. Some mapping for it, so press Ctrl T. I'm going to delete the image texture. I'm going to add in a wave texture. Now the second one is going to be a transparent node. So let's add that in, transparent BSDF. And we're gonna, sorry, I had them around the wrong way. And we're going to pop that through into our mix shader. Now I'm going to change the color to something like orange because I think it'll look cool. And as you can see, to be honest, we've already got a really cool looking like translucent sort of trail here, but it doesn't have any detail. So we're going to add that using our wave text. So let's plug the vector of our mapping node into the vector and add in a invert node and connect this up to a color ramp. To be fair, we could do the inversion in the color ramp. I'm going to do that, less nodes. Invert it, clamp it down. Next, as you can see, our texture isn't actually being displayed properly. So to fix that, I'm going to use the generated, and then in our mapping node, I'm going to change the rotation to something like 90 degrees on the y-axis. And that'll get the stripes going along the text, like so. Now, next, let's just increase the scale. So add a few more stripes in there and add some distortion. This will give a really cool looking wavy effect. And we can even up the detail. Okay, that's it for our wave texture. Next, let's move on and add in a Fresnel node and a math node. And then we're going to set this math node to multiply. And this Fresnel is going to go into the bottom value. Top value is going to be plugging into another math node. And I'll show you what happens up here in a bit. Finally, I'm going to invert this math node and plug the color into the factor of the mix shader and the shader into the surface. And as you can see, our effect is starting to appear. Okay, so remember this math node? We're going to use this to add in a gradient and some noise. So let's add in a noise texture and then a separate XYZ node. And let's bring this underneath here. And with this texture coordinate, we're going to plug in the object into the vector of our noise texture, and then I'll generate it into our separate XYZ. Now, if we have a look at this real quick, we can see our X value is sort of grading. The gradient for our X value is sort of coming across this way, which is not the right axis for us. The Y value is coming up from the bottom, and the Z value is coming up from the back here, which is perfect for us. So I'm going to duplicate this color ramp, pop it in here, and because it's set to invert, I'm going to really quickly flip that. And now you can see we can control this sort of sweeping gradient that comes across our text. So let's clean this up a bit. I'm going to move that up. Also use this gradient that we've made here to subtract from our emission of our wave so that we have a fall off. And the way I'm going to do this is using this multiply node. So if I plug the color into the bottom and the color into the top, or the factor, I'm probably going to use a factor, and duplicate this color ramp. Now I'm going to move this off to the side. Take a look at this color ramp here. I don't want there to be any detail, or sorry, I don't want there to be much detail. And I think the scale should probably be a little bit more extreme. Next, I'm going to clamp it. And it's currently inverted, so I'm going to really quickly flip our channels here, because I want black dots on a white background. Now if we have a look at this multiply node, what it will do is we move this gradient up, and that's working perfectly. Now all we have to do is mix it into our wave texture, which we've already done, and we should have a fall off starting to occur. So let's have a look. Yeah, awesome, perfect. Now, this is almost the effect done. There's a few more things I want to do. I want to increase the strength of this emission here. And I also want to kind of clamp off this wave texture a bit more. And that's pretty much our effect done. The next step is to come into our world shaders settings here and bump the color down to black. Now I'm going to add a new material in for this top text here, and we're just going to call this glass and add in a glass BSDF node, connect that, and bump up the roughness. Now the final effect here is we want to actually change the color of this glass so that we have some really nice color variation. So I'm going to make this glass a sort of an orangey color, and then I'm going to make the trail a more yellow color. And I think these two look really good together. I'm going to come into the render tab here, and for rendering, we probably only need something like 500 samples. So actually I'm going to do 200. And I'm also going to, in the compositing tab, enable use nodes, add in a denoiser just in case, and add in a glare node. And this will add some nice bloom to our scene. So if we change this to fog glow and down the size to like 2, I press F12 and render it, it'll render out really nicely. Now, one thing I want to do here is try and get rid of these caps. And a fun little way to do that in the materials is to simply use this separate XYZ node here. So we'll get the Z value of that. If we let's just move all this down first. Real quick, move this down. If we take the Z value of that and put it into another color ramp, if we have a look at that color ramp, we can see what we're doing. And invert it, we can get it so it's only that cap here, this part. Like that. And really clamp it down, like as you can see. And we can add in another multiply node. Pop this value in, and it will just remove that cap for us. So now if we use this as an input instead of this node, so we unplug that, plug this into here, and have a look. It has gotten rid of that that cap, and that's really handy because we don't really want that necessarily, because the effect looks much better without it, in my opinion. And that's it for this tutorial, guys. I hope you make something really cool. As always, the project files for this tutorial will be available for free on my Gumroad. The link is in the description. You can download those, play around, and follow along if you're having any issues. Thanks, guys, and I will see you next week.